Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
It's no secret to all of us, as I've been doing these kind of chats with teams and organizations and companies all over the place in the last few weeks, that I have never been more convinced of this than ever, that the teams, the individual humans, but also the teams and the organizations that are aligned in their mindset as leaders and understand what is the culture of the work that they're trying to do and care for the people around, are going to be the ones that navigate their way through this to the best of their ability. So I'm trying to start each of my days making sure that I'm thinking with entering my mindset every day with a spirit of gratitude, starting and making sure that my mindset as a leader is first. I'm grateful to be where I am, that I'm safe. I turn my mind to think about those that are out there that are suffering. I'm thankful for the people that are on the front line serving. And I'm also doing my best to make sure then I'm furthering my own development. And I'm thinking about the work that I still have to do in the world, and that we as teams and organizations, how do we in the midst of isolation and quarantine continue to develop the way that we're thinking, acting, and interacting in the world. So the purpose of these quarantine chats, as I started to do this with people all over the world, is to connect with people, to have a few minutes where at least we pause maybe from the work that we've been doing or the days of isolation, to step back and to have a conversation that hopefully engages our minds and our hearts and reminds us back to who it is that we're trying to be in the world. The purpose, again, of these quarantine chats is to just spread a little positivity into the world, to think about our own leadership and to think about care. And so I'm excited to be on the call with all of you today, excited that this will become a podcast afterwards and spread and amplified even further out into the world, so that we can make sure that we're spreading good messages and care for people while all of us are trying to navigate our way through these times of isolation and quarantine. So today I'm excited to be welcoming in my guest and a wonderful person. Officially the title at Ernst & Young, which I know many of you on the call today already know this, but as the America's Director for Inclusiveness Recruiting at Ernst & Young. He's a leader, a husband, a dad, a former Manhattan Jasper basketball player, which I always love pointing that out to him. He and I are both basketball guys, so we love that. I am going to welcome in, I'm going to unmute Ken Bouyer and welcome Ken to this quarantine chat.
Jason, thank you so much. Great to be here. And hi, everyone. I see a lot of my good friends and EY folks out there. So thanks for having me.
It's great to be with you from a distance. I think just last week we had on our schedule that you were going to be in Columbus, Ohio, and we were going to be sitting down and enjoying a meal together. But unfortunately, here we are. So first and foremost, tell everybody where you are and tell us, how is life around you these days?
Yeah, thanks. So hunkered down here in the home office in New Jersey. From the COVID-19, we're the second hardest hit state. So it has been a tough go, 4 months, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it's been now in the house. Not too much outside interaction other than things like this on Zoom, but in New Jersey and just trying to stay safe with the family.
And all your, first and foremost, all your family is safe and you guys are healthy and everything's all right?
Thank God. Yeah, we are all good. Knock on wood. Some extended family have some challenges, but just the immediate family, we are, thank God, just in good shape.
Good. What's it like being in New Jersey right now? I mean, I'm guessing that in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I am right now, certainly it's a ghost town and people are walking around. Anybody who's outside, has a mask on, and certainly all the social distancing continues. But I got to think that right in New Jersey and around New York, it's even more drastic.
It is. It's lonely, right? I think when you go outside and if you have to go to stores, which we do on occasion, it is literally a ghost town. And the keeping the distance is hard for someone like me I like to get up in your face. I'm a hugger, all those things. So it's difficult for me to have to keep that distance. But it is lonely to say the least, Jason.
Yeah. It's awesome to see you. I mean, I'm grateful that I can see you and that we have this technology for us to, even though we were going to have dinner together in person, that we're, able to do this kind of thing. But how do you find, I'm fascinated, all the people that I've been talking with over the last few weeks in doing these quarantine chats, I'm fascinated by when we are in isolation and when we are literally quarantined. How do you find yourself passing the time, and what are the kind of things you're thinking about and that you're doing while you're in this time of isolation?
Yeah, great question, Jason. To be honest, the first few weeks were difficult. Given the role that I have at the firm, I'm on the road on a plane, whether at schools or clients or just at conferences a lot.
Yeah.
So a big adjustment, candidly, was not being on the road. And I'm a pretty A-type personality, so not, working 10 hours a day and, being busy every moment of the day for me to have to slow down a little bit, candidly, was a big adjustment, right? I think finally we're getting into a little bit of a rhythm as it relates to this new normal, as we're calling it today. So that's been a big adjustment. And I think for me, candidly, trying to figure out ways to recalibrate, right? What does this look like in the face of we still have work to do? We still have a firm we have to run, but how do we recalibrate, for me, my life, right? That has been really, in some sense, turned upside down. So that's what I'm trying to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that resonates with me. I mean, that I'm on the road a lot too, and speaking at events and consulting with teams and organizations all over the place. And so this, all of a sudden, when that comes screeching to a halt in the sense that we're all grounded. And literally, I like that language because literally we're grounded, but it's a time for us to then return to our grounding. And what is it that we're grounded in? And yet we have this time and space now to think about it and hopefully work on how is it that we're showing up in the world every day. And the work that we have to do, I also believe that there's opportunity to begin to see things a little differently, instead of just being in the routines that in the same way we're operating every single day, to create a little bit of space for us to step back and to think about it. And I love the fact that you use the word calibrate because, you and you've been a speaker at my event, Thermostat Cultures Live, the event that I host in November here in Columbus, Ohio. But we've talked a lot about that. What is that temperature that you're trying to set? And that thermostat, what is this as a leader? And that the values that you have as a leader, how do you calibrate that every single day? So how do you think about your values and the leader that you're trying to be in the work that you do and the relationships you have in the world in a time like this? How does that, when crisis comes up, how does that play a role in your thinking every day?
It's a great question. I would say that people really look to their leaders for signals, right? To reaffirm who we are, Jason. How are we going to act through this crisis and how are we going to come together? So I go into every day thinking about that, right? What kind of signals am I sending as a leader? How are we going to reaffirm who we are and the values that we're bringing to the firm and everything that we do every single day? And how am I acting? The one thing for me, and I think for a lot of us as leaders on this call, the ability and need to be transparent. I mean, I've been on calls and some of my team members are on, but sharing my feelings relative to how this is hard. This has been a transition. It's not been easy, right? And we've got life going on around us. I've got, my mom is, for example, is in South Carolina. We had a storm last night, trees down in her yard, right? So we have life going on and really trying to manage and maintain. My daughter, who's 15, is doing homeschooling. Thank God she's independent. But there are other parents out there who have kids that they're trying to do a Zoom chat and their 5-year-olds crawling on them or the dogs jumping on them. But that's just the new normal. We have to adjust to that and tell your people and signal to your people that that's okay. We're going to get through this and this is the new normal and we're going to deal with it. And by the way, I love the kids drawing in the back, whatever it might be.
Right.
And I think we've got to adjust to who we are. Yeah.
And so for those leaders out there that are looking to you and saying, hey, Ken, how do I spread a different spirit, or morale seems to be, where our minds go. I just did a podcast the other day that talked about that courage is sitting in ambiguity, that courage, true courage as a leader arises when we're able to sit in ambiguity, meaning we don't have all the answers. And it's a time of unknown and it's a time of uncertainty, but yet true leaders, that's when they're able to sit with that and have the courage to then say, what's our response? And how do we set a temperature that doesn't turn everybody to kind of fear and doubt and doom and gloom? What would you say to leaders that are looking to you and saying, hey, how do I set that temperature for the people that are looking to me and are around me every day?
Yeah, great question. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a real life example of our U.S. CEO, Kelly Greer, several weeks ago came out with a webcast to the entire firm. First, I would tell you from a leadership perspective, she and the board pulled the plug very early around travel, live meetings.
Yep.
It's very, very earlier than most organizations. So they had the foresight to say that this is a real issue. Let's make sure we care and ensure our people are safe.
Yeah.
And the message is we care about our people, full stop. Let's just slow down, take a deep breath, stop traveling, live meetings, and then let's see how it goes. And then a week or so later, she comes out and the board with the all hands webcast, reaffirming our values. And there are a couple of statements she made in there. People were concerned about jobs, right? Her comment and from her and the board was, our first thing is to protect all of our people's jobs. There'll be no layoffs.
Wow.
But also saying we all have to sacrifice in order to create and make that a reality. From the partners all the way down to all of us folks, we have a bonus structure in the firm. But folks, some folks are getting bonuses. They said, look, we're going to not be able to give bonuses this year. But that's about all of us being engaged and fully committed to ensuring that, guess what? Everyone has an opportunity. So she hit the things head on that our people were concerned and worried about and said, here's what we're going to do about it. So being incredibly transparent, being very sincere as a leader, and being decisive on those things, I think were really important. I would say that all the folks on the call, are you decisive? You got to be thoughtful, obviously. But are you decisive? And are you really hitting and talking about the things that matter to your people? Many leaders lose sight and miss those things.
Yeah, and how we communicate the message is critical, right? So whatever that message is, to be able to make sure that we think about how is it that we're communicating it. And then I love that just the directness of saying, hey, let's be transparent about what the message is. And what I also hear you saying is leading with that care, and then also that message that, hey, we're in this together. This isn't going to be just one person to suffer. If one person is suffering, we're all going to suffer, right? That we're going to spread out that, and we're all going to do this for the team. That was a message that came from the top?
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, it was well received. I talked to obviously a number of people in the firm after that, and what a message, what a moment, right? I think leaders rise to these occasions, and unfortunately not all do. But I think the true leadership qualities and abilities of people really shine in times of stress and challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. What do you see? I'm talking to companies all the time and on these different chats and people oftentimes are asking me, what do I see coming out of this? What do I think is going to happen? But I'm interested from your perspective across the firm and beyond. What do you see coming out of this? What are going to be things that are going to maybe continue that we've maybe are experiencing right now in the way that we're being challenged to operate differently? And what are going to be some new things that you think this is going to maybe trigger of, and some of, some unintended consequences, but oftentimes we think of those as negative things, but a lot of times there's unintended consequences that are good and positive things that will come of this.
Absolutely. A few thoughts on that, Jason. I think there will be a new economy that will come out of this without question, right? New services will come out of this, and we'll have to figure out and see what those things are. So there'll be newness out of this. Unfortunately, though, there are going to be some sectors that will take a long time to recover, if they recover at all. Right? I do get concerned about some of the really small entrepreneurs and mom and pop shops, if you will. Yep. Their ability to make it through, and unfortunately, many probably will not make it through. So I do think the sectors, whether it's the airline industry and the cruise line as an example, right, they'll probably come back. It'll be tough. But the players that have been small in the market and haven't been thoughtful about planning for, no one could plan for this, but planning for just tough times, I think some unfortunately will not make it. But I'll be interested in what the new economy and what the entrepreneurs out there bring forward. I had a wild idea that as you get up and go to a shopping mall in the future, as you walk through, sort of like these misting tents or, sprays, that'll be like Lysol. I don't know, someone's out to invent something when you walk through into something,
yeah,
you get way down, so to speak. Right. So I just think there are going to be new things that come about as a result of this. The other one, there's some folks here with universities.
Yeah.
The other one is that my prediction is that there'll be a number of universities that won't make it through this. There were some that are challenged before. I think the other one is challenging the model of service delivery around education. There's many resistant to the whole virtual and online learning. Guess what? We're proving now from middle school, high school, you name it, to college, that you can in fact deliver virtual learning. Right. So that will have an impact in some form or fashion at a university level. To what extent we'll see, but inevitably there'll be some changes without question.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Anytime I've been asked that question recently, and I've referenced that courage is being able to sit in ambiguity. When we as leaders, when we sit in ambiguity and that unknown and that uncertainty, if we get trapped in our mindset and really paralyzed by fear and doubt and the bad things that we're experiencing, then that's where we stay. But the leaders that are able to shift their eyesight and begin to be open to the fact that if I can sit in this ambiguity and realize that I don't have to do it all the same way I've always done it, then there are going to be opportunities that are going to emerge. And there's also going to be liberation. If we're allowed to liberate ourselves from the old habits, then a couple of things are going to happen. Two things that I'm predicting right now is one, we're going to come out of this. All this kind of forced ambiguity is also what I refer to as forced innovation. It's challenging all of us to learn new ways to communicate and connect, and certainly with all of these virtual, communication tools that we're now using, any of those companies and organizations that have been tipping their toe in the water of kind of distance learning and or, remote working and all that, and or just rethinking, like, instead of us traveling and, 6 hours over for a 1 hour meeting and the cost and the expense to do that, they're going to start to rethink, and there's going to be some forced innovation that's going to say, maybe we can connect virtually, and there are ways to do this differently. And so I think there are going to be all kinds, whether it's the Mister thing down that you're talking about, there's going to be all kinds of forced innovation that's going to take place. And then the other thing that I think we're all going to be reminded of, and I certainly am on a day-to-day basis, but I think coming out of this, is that there's power in congregation. That's the phrase that keeps coming up in my mind and my heart in the last couple of weeks, is there's power in congregation, which means there's going to be a time in the future when this physical distancing, this social distancing, when finally we're able to do that again, and there are going to be teams and companies and organizations and communities that are going to be thirsty to congregate. And what that means is it's going to reveal to us how important those in-person relationships are. And how do we still connect with each other? And so there's going to absolutely be opportunities virtually, but it's going to prove to us again that there's power in us getting our people together, aligning our minds and hearts, and getting clear on where it is that we're trying to go next. I'm convinced of that.
I agree, Jason. Great points.
Where do you find, so obviously when there's not a clear next step, no, let's turn on the news right now and nobody can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Nobody has a crystal ball. But when you're sitting with that ambiguity as a leader, what tips would you remind people of just to stay healthy themselves during these times so that they're able to not only get a little further down the road in their work, but just to stay mindful and healthy? What tips would you share to people?
Yeah, within EY, we're doing a lot of mindfulness training, and we have these mindfulness chats every day across the firm virtually. Obviously, you can join.
Great.
There's a woman in the firm who's come on my team calls, and we've done some mindfulness sessions, but really just focusing on breathing, yoga, kind of meditation, if you will, and being thoughtful about taking care of yourself. I mean, obviously, like for me, my gym's closed.
Yeah.
Right? And usually I'm at the gym, not a lot, but on occasion that I do go, it's closed, right? So now I've got to walk around the neighborhood or do whatever I'm going to do, or eat more, that's what I've been intending to do, Jason. So, but I do think, just staying focused on your health, obviously eating, and, I get up every single day like I'm going to work, and like, I've got my home office, and I'm like, tell the family I'm going to work. I close my door. right? I've got a routine down. Same thing with my daughter. Having a routine, I think, is important. She gets up, she gets ready for school, virtual school. She gets dressed.
Yep.
We're like, no going to virtual school in your pajamas. Some of you, I know I'm on Zoom calls all the time. Some people, you can do whatever you want to do. But this is how I approach it, right? I get up, I'm dressed, I'm ready to go to work. And it's just a mindset thing. And I think you've got to have the right mindset in all things that you do to make the best of it, and obviously look for the silver linings.
Absolutely. So you're telling me you actually have pants on right now? You don't have, shorts on or something that we can't see, You're not
no, yeah, I've got pants on, shoes, I'm good. You just have to believe me, because I'm not going to stand up.
Yeah. I know we've got a number of team members from across Ernst & Young and others, I think, that are listening into this call from a distance. If you're out there and you've got a question that you want to ask, I'd love you to shoot it in the chat box. If there's something that you're thinking about related to leadership, related to our mindset, navigating our way through this, or just anything that's come to your mind, as we all of us as humans are now experiencing these times of isolation and quarantine. If there are those kind of questions out there that are emerging to you, please shoot me a question in the chat box, and I'll make sure that we fire it in here in the final minutes that we've got together. So tell me this. Oh, here comes one. Here comes a chat. Let's see here. What would you tell anyone who is managing a team who is struggling to keep their people motivated through this time?
Ooh, that's a great question. A few things. One, just from a leadership perspective, I'm a big believer in emotional intelligence. I think really being attuned to your people and their needs. I think a lot more check-ins, a lot more one-on-one check-ins with your team members, because what I'm learning is certainly through this, everyone is walking through this challenge in a different manner, right? Everyone's situation is somewhat unique, but certainly very different. But I think checking in with your folks and your team members frequently, and frankly, a one-on-one, right? I think that helps. The other one is making sure that you're still to task around things that need to get done, and reinforcing and challenging people to be innovative. So there's a couple of my team members on, but the one things I've asked to think about is there'll be a new normal that will arise as a result of this. How are we going to execute recruiting from a D&I standpoint in this new, potentially very virtual reality? So thinking about our current strategy, how we're going to tweak it. People want stuff to do, not just busy stuff, but being really thoughtful about, here's time for all of you as a leader and with your teams to take that step back. Jason, you could talk about your book, but take that step back and focus on what will the future look like, and challenge your team to create and evolve the future together. But I think that's going to be really important. So check-ins with your team members one-on-one very frequently, facing the realities of what's happening in their world, giving people space when they need it, because everyone's going to interpret and digest this in a very different manner. But giving people space and reaffirming your trust in them. Yeah. And I trust my team unequivocally. And if they've got to run out to deal with their kids or whatever it may be, or do their homeschooling at that time of the day, it's all good. Because I know you're going to get the job done. I'm not worried about it. But you've got to reinforce those signals. And I think that will ultimately get people motivated. And hopefully that'll work. So great question.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you referenced my first book, Step Back from the Baggage Claim, is about that idea of all of us being able to step back and to think about the way that we move throughout the world, and that yet so many of us get running so frenetically every single day, and we get into those habits and the busyness and all the things that we think we're supposed to be doing, but yet taking time to step back and to breathe, to connect with each other, and then to make sure that we're thoughtful about what our next actions are and what are needed. In fact, one of your team members, Tanika, looks like is sending in a question here, or at least a comment. She's saying, Ken, that you did something really great recently. You stopped a meeting in the middle of it, and you said, hold on, let's discuss how people were doing, and rounded out with what was everybody grateful for. And she's saying how great that was. Why did you feel like that was an important thing to do in that moment?
Well, thank you, Tanika. I reference emotional intelligence. I think as a leader, you've got to more than just be focused on the numbers, if you will. You have to really be connected to your team and your people. And there was just something that hit me as we were going into that call, that although we had a full agenda for that day, we needed to take a step back, Jason, And so it just morphed into this, how are you doing? I shared some thoughts around what I was feeling, opened it up to others to share what they were going through. And then, Tanika, you're right. I closed out and said, what's the silver lining? Like, what's good? In spite of all that we're going through, there's some silver linings here. Like, silver lining I shared was with my daughter, right? My daughter's 15. She's a sophomore. Before I know it, she'll be in college. Throughout the day, like throughout the week, we're having lunch together.
Yeah.
We did a virtual tour of the Cincinnati Zoo the other day. Like, we're spending time, we're having dinner together, right? So I think for me, having that connection and knowing that life is going on around us just prompted me, Jason, through this feeling, emotional intelligence, whatever you want to call it, to just have a very different dialogue. And Tanika, thanks. I'm glad that everyone felt good about that. And that's terrific.
You know, in times of every single day, but certainly in times of crisis, what I talk about is crisis often reveals leadership. Because in times of crisis, it's easy to think of yourself as a servant leader, to think of yourself as somebody who's willing to sacrifice, to think of somebody who builds trust and with their team members, all those kind of things. It's easy when things are going well. That's an easier thing to do and say. But in times of crisis, and when people are literally sick and or worried, and economic challenges are in front of everybody, that's when leadership is revealed. It's also, I think right now what's happening in the world is, rather than everybody, I mean, we're being asked to shelter in place and to really take care of ourselves and the people around us, and realize that the way our behaviors impact the other people. But at the same time, there's this message of we're in this together. And there's also, I want you to just speak for a second through the lens of diversity and inclusion, that this idea that across lines and in the midst of a time where we have challenges and crisis, that it's a time for us also to be aware and, yes, take care of ourselves, be smart, realize our behaviors impact other people, but also to not forget that we're in this together and it crosses lines and we're supposed to be reaching out to one another.
Great question. A few things here. I could spend the next 30 minutes talking about that question. But just in short, I think empathy is really critical here. I think each of us have a story. Each of us are going through a lot. Being empathetic of people and their journey, right? That's what a lot of D&I speaks to, right? Appreciating and respecting difference and just understanding it, right? I may not be walking, Jason, in your exact shoes, but I need to be empathetic to kind of your journey and where you are, much like others on the phone here today. So I think that really does speak to the inclusiveness and aspect of diversity, if you will. And the other one we're talking about a lot in the firm is being an inclusive leader, right? So we're talking about leadership, being mindful that a virtual reality that we're in today creates different insider-outsider dynamics, right? In stressful times, leaders will often, or people, not just leaders, people defer. And it's much easier for me, Jason, if we're buddies, for me to include you, ask you to do every single project that comes up, or to spend more time chatting with you. But guess what? I've got members across the world. I've got to be mindful if I'm going to be really inclusive. I've got to be thoughtful about everyone and make sure everyone feels like they belong and they're a part of the team or the firm. So being an inclusive leader is a big part of diversity, right? Because people are different, and we're talking about different here. But being inclusive in your thought, how you act, your interactions, how you're working on projects together, I think this is a great way for you to work on some of those qualities and those attributes as it relates to D&I.
No doubt. Well, we're almost at our time here, man. So I just wanted to remind everybody before we get off this call is to remind everybody that the purpose of these, and again, I thank Ken Bouyer for joining me and sharing his insights on this call, because the purpose of this is I'm just trying to reach out to people in the world that I respect, that I admire, that are friends of mine, to check in, but also because I think it's part of, it's a role that all of us can play in a time of fear and doubt and doom and gloom, to also be leaders that are spreading positivity, that are making sure that we are caring for people, and that we are reaching out across lines to say, hold on a second, we are in this together. We are going to get through this. And again, if leadership is revealed in times of crisis and ambiguity and unknown, I want to choose to have it reveal that we care for one another, that we are inclusive in our thinking, that we are then responding and calibrating that thermostat in the way that we want to, not only the way that we individually want to move throughout the world, but the way that we hope to set that temperature for other people. So again, thank you to Ken, my great friend and mentor and wonderful human. Ken, thanks again for being with me. At Jason V. Barger, you'll see more about those messages and other quarantine chats that are still to come. I hope you'll help amplify great messages into the world. Ken and everyone out there, be safe, be well, and thanks for sharing some positivity and some care and some leadership today.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for my EY colleagues for being here. And Jason, I'll end with this quote from Muhammad Ali.
Love it.
Don't count the days, make the days count. Keep making them count, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.